Hey there, everyone. I'm Cassandra from CassandraTindall.com, and we are going to be looking at the June overview for 2021. So this is going to be a huge month, hands down, no doubt about that, because one of the signature aspects of 2021 is the tension-inducing square between Saturn and Uranus. So Saturn is in Aquarius and Uranus is in Taurus. And so forming that square aspect across the fixed signs. So not only is it a signature aspect for 2021, it's also a signature feature of this month. We had the first Saturn and Uranus square back in February. We've got the second one this month, and then the final one will be in December. So there is a part of the astrology this month that is really like harking us back to the beginning of the year. Now, I know this is a bit of a more of a personal analogy or story around it, but as this year was turning into this year, so throughout the sort of Christmas holidays and into the new year, I got caught watching Vikings again. And I remembered thinking, wow, like this really does sort of, as an example of the astrology that we are moving into 2021. And I had this sort of thing, Saturn, you've got these people who, the Norwegians who are wanting to break into new lands. They want to go on adventure and they wanted to, expand the land and expand opportunities for their people. And of course, in order to do that, they had to sort of innovate, embrace new technology, which was like quartz crystal and a sundial at the time, and do something that they'd never done before. And in order to do so, obviously, there was the risk factor. And then once they got to the other side, the first time you do something, sometimes it can almost feel a little bit easy. And then they, obviously came back to Norway and, talked to the Lord, or I can't remember what his name was, and then, they had some obstacles and challenges around what they did. And in order to do it again, they were more aware of the risks. But then, of course, those risks on the other side, AKA the English, had the opportunity to reinforce and prepare and to set up structures or systems to not get attacked again. And so as we move into June, I can sort of sense that there could be some overlay of theme here. And this aspect could potentially be a little bit more difficult, astrologically speaking, than the first one that we had. So one of the reasons for that is this is the retrograde square. So Saturn is moving backwards through Aquarius and connecting back to Uranus and Taurus. And one feature that could make this particular month feel more like a grind than what the first one did is that you might remember that Jupiter sextiled Uranus and then Saturn sextiled Uranus. So there was this sort of Jupiter-Saturn influence at the start of the year. This time, Saturn isn't co-present with Jupiter. So it's like Saturn has lost its happy house guest, and it is on its own. It may not have the same level of hope or belief or optimism through that Aquarius energy, particularly in your own birth chart. Saturn's retrograde, so it might feel like a little, oh, not this hill again, or not this vast ocean I need to cross again, or not this obstacle in the way. Another analogy to think about this energy particularly is, if you've ever had a baby, and sometimes you can go into the first birth and all of that kind of blind because you've never done it before. And then you do it again. And, I have not done that personally. I've only got one, but it's this idea of like, am I really doing this again? And this sort of awareness, like the naivety of the newness is gone. And it's like, oh, this old chestnut, while I've done it before, and that could kind of help, sometimes doing something with a little bit of knowledge under your belt can sometimes also be a little bit daunting, or I know this road is a little bit challenging, but the only way to get to the other end of the road is to go through it. So there's this energy around those type of ideas this month in June. And so look to the Aquarius house in your birth chart and look to the Taurus one, and how are those themes or how are those house topics starting to become activated as we move through June. That said, this energy is in play all year. It just has these sort of peaks and troughs of energy, and that is going to be the case in June. So another feature of June, I'll just share my screen with you here, is I think another planet to really watch this month is the planet Mars. So as the month begins, keeping in mind we are in the midst of eclipse season as May becomes June. So that's really kind of sensitizing, activating, putting a little bit of focus on the moon. And as we know, Mars is in Cancer, which is the moon's sign. So as we are in the eclipse portal, Mars will then progress and make its biennial or once in every 2-year meeting or opposition with Pluto. So that will happen on the 5th if you're in the USA, Canada, Northern Hemisphere time zones. And for us here in Australia, that will happen on the 6th. And so when this aspect comes into play, one of the big questions is who's in charge? You know, who is holding the strings here? Who is making the rules? So themes of power dynamics, manipulation, control are going to sort of come to a head, you know, as May becomes June. The aspect happens exactly around the 5th and the 6th, depending on your time zone. But as the month begins, we're going to be in orb. So we're looking at, by the time Mars gets to about 23 of Cancer, and that those energies are going to really peak. So of course, if you have planets around 23 to sort of 27 of cardinal signs, particularly Cancer or Capricorn, this is really going to set things off. Now, technically speaking, Mars is not in its best position in Cancer. Action is dependent on feeling, or action is dependent on comfort or emotions. And that's not what Mars really aims to do. You know, it's action, it's getting things done, it has an objective. It's like that soldier that just wants to go and move forward. But Cancer is ruled by the moon. It wants to fluctuate, it wants to take action dependent on feelings, as I mentioned. So how I've seen this play out a little bit in real life is the fact, you know, depending on your locale in the world, is that some people are now returning to work after working from home in comfort, getting food when they want to, maybe having breaks when the mood peaks, or doing things at a more maybe in flux type of cycle, instead of always being there at 9 a.m. and, you know, lunchtime at 12 or whatever, you know, whatever the cycle is. So as people are sort of being encouraged or forced or manipulated, you know, you have to come back to the office now, there may be this little bit of tension around, you know, I don't want to do that anymore. We've proven that my workplace can operate remotely. Why do I have to give up comfort, or why do I have to serve this dark lord, you know, Pluto in Capricorn, versus, you know, the actions that I'm taking on a day-to-day basis that is really about my comfort or my family or my sense of emotional well-being. So these sort of tensions might sort of come as the month comes, you know, as June becomes June. So there might be this sort of sense of fighting for what's right, or fighting for what your true motives are, you know, and that might be a little bit more around home or family, or protecting what is really important to you, as opposed to what's important to somebody else. And that can be that dynamic of the opposition there. You know, it's this sense of things being out of balance and trying to seek balance. Now, sometimes there could be this idea of pushing back on authority, or pushing back on power, or pushing back on how I'm being manipulated to work for something I don't want to work for, or do something that I don't want to do. So planets in Cancer are naturally supporting. So while Mars in Cancer is not the happiest placement for Mars, planets in Cancer do naturally support Jupiter, because Jupiter finds its exaltation in Cancer. And obviously that orb is out of place right now, but it's still forming that, what we call that whole sign trine. So this might be the idea of taking altruistic Mars action around something that has meaning or purpose, or something that is, really valuable to you as opposed to somebody else. And at the same time, Venus is making that lovely trine to Jupiter. So there is this sort of possibility as the month starts that there could be some tension around what action I'm going to take, Mars, but being able to potentially negotiate the terms or the outcomes as well. So things will definitely change as the week moves on. And as the week moves on, well, firstly, we'll have a solar eclipse in Gemini, and that'll take place on the 10th. So that will be at 19 degrees of Gemini. So that will be the moon getting really close to the sun and the North Node and forming that eclipse. So I won't talk too much about the eclipse in this particular video, because that will probably be something I will do as the eclipse grows closer. But one thing to, I guess, keep in mind is that the sun is going to be eclipsed by the moon. So the Mars is still in the moon sign. And then the day after, Mars moves into Leo. And when Mars moves into Leo, it's going to, it will be fired up. It will be aggravated. It will be disrupted, because it's, it's just been sort of involved by rulership with the eclipse. So, and when Mars moves through fixed signs in 2021, naturally it's going to activate that Saturn-Uranus square that we talked about. So Mars will be in Leo until about late July. So this is an energy that's going to be in place for some time. And, while, if we think back to what happened last time Mars went into a fixed sign, that was when Mars was in Taurus as the year began. I think it might have ingressed around the 6th, and that's when people broke into the Capitol dressed as farm animals and things like that. So it had a very literal meaning around, this idea of breaking up the status quo, or being restless, or volatility, and those type of energies as well. So these are definitely things we could most certainly expect in June and throughout July as well. So Mars moves into Leo on the 11th. Now, as Mars moves through Leo, it's naturally going to oppose Saturn in Aquarius and square Uranus in Taurus. So it's forming this fixed, like a T-square between the fixed signs. And so there is going to be a sense of tension or restlessness. So again, thinking about those two houses in your birth chart, Aquarius and Taurus, that where there's been tension, or maybe a little bit of restlessness, or things are a little bit stuck or stagnant, but I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to make change or progress in those areas. Mars is going to come along and show you how. So Mars is a hot, dry planet, and it's moving into a hot, dry sign. So while Mars has no particular dignity in that sign, there is a sign affinity there. There can be action taken. There's, I'm ready to power on. I'm ready to do what has to be done. And so there is in terms of just the Mars vibe, there is definitely an uptake of energy. But there's also real excessive heat. There's excessive dryness, which can sometimes really upset the apple cart in some respects, but it's definitely going to shake things up, get things moving, much more than what Mars in Cancer is capable of doing. So looking to the house in your birth chart that is ruled by the sign of Leo, that might give you some ideas or insight around what action you can take to solve some Saturn Uranus problems that may be taking shape in your life. So even though this whole Uranus, Saturn, Mars dynamic, it's not a walk in the park. It's not a comfortable energy. It's not something that is conducive to sunshine and roses. Like, it does bring tension, it brings frustration, it brings how much do I change versus how much do I stay the same, and that tension point between something that feels new, fresh, and different versus something that is safe or known or comfortable. And again, we've just had a lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So there may be some questions about what is dogma in my life versus what is actual truth. And so maybe taking action or making change that reflect these renewed values too. So I don't necessarily see this aspect as a total problem. However, Mars can help you. Mars is more effective in Leo, so it can definitely help you cut things out or cut things away or take action around things that really matter for you. So this might be some old resentments or old habits or old traditions. If you're like, things are too stuck and stagnant, it's like, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this action. I'm going to show leadership in a particular area to energize change or revolution or movement in other parts of my life. So a bit of a technical feature with this aspect is that throughout June, Saturn will technically be in the overcoming position to Mars. So they are in the opposition, but it won't be till Mars moves past that 12, 13 degrees of Leo that it will then, the tables will turn. So as we move through June, there is this idea of maybe curbing taking too much action or curbing a tendency to violence, which is could be a manifestation as well. It might be understanding that don't change just for change's sake. It might be sharpening the sword to the changes that you really want to make. And then when Mars is in charge as we move into July, then you can cut those things away. This might be the month for sitting a little bit still, but keeping that iron in the fire and being ready to make that move or make that choice when the time is right for you. Another factor is the idea of the two benefics, Venus and Jupiter, being in water signs. So Venus will be in Cancer from around the 2nd of the month through around the 26th, 27th, depending on your time zone. So this is going to help cool things down. If you do feel stuck, if you do feel stagnant, if you do feel just that frustration, do something that feels nourishing for the soul. Do something that might help cool down frayed ends or raised tempers. Connect to things of meaning or purpose or people that help you feel good or feel elevated or help you feel, just to help connect emotionally. There's a lot of dryness, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of heat in the air this month. So leaning into those cool, watery, connective, benefic planets, whether that is people, whether that is activities or things that sort of support your sense of calm or serenity or hope for the future, would definitely be worth leaning into those as well. So that gives you just a few tips, a few ideas for how the astrology of June might manifest. Another feature of June is that I am starting module 1 of my contemporary astrology program. So if you are curious about learning more astrology, I am launching what is my 2-year program in astrology, and I am going to be doing a 5-week training series all about the houses And that starts on June 30 here in Australia, technically the 29th in the other parts of the world. So it's part of a 2-year program, and you can take it module by module. So if you want to brush up your skills on the houses or your knowledge about the houses, or if you're brand new and you want to understand more about astrology, all the details are there. I'll pop the link in the show notes below, and you can learn more about what's on offer in the Contemporary Astrology program. Of course, if you have any questions about the program, you're more than welcome to connect with me, and I hope to see you in class sometime soon. So until the next video, I'll say bye for now, and I hope this month of June is gentle and supportive as much as it possibly can be.